Hello and welcome. Welcome back to our Clash of Cronies. It's our bi-weekly stream that we do where we try to determine the outcome between two kind of original content, semi-original content characters that we made, and have them pitted against each other in battle, and y'all vote on them, the victor, through social media channels, and it's a real good time. Thank you for joining. I am Carter from the Wacom Experience Center. We're back at it. Let me turn that down. Let me play this, what we have so far. It's, looks like it's still rendering a bit, so it's a little slower. But yeah, this was the initial kind of video that we put out for people to vote on which one they want to win. So we had the Corrosive Cube there, and then the Merfolk Battle Mage. The Corrosive Cube is a kind of a D&D artifact. So it's been popularized elsewhere, but it's basically just like it is kind of what it, yeah. It's just a semi-sentient little cube that dissolves things and like consumes things. So it's kind of nasty. And then the Merfolk one was slightly more original, but also very like Magic the Gathering inspired. It's just like a mer person, and they are kind of a warrior class or something. So I'm going to be working more in After Effects today, and just going through the motions of this battle. So it's going to be fun. Let me go ahead and pause this. All right. So yeah, this is After Effects. It's if you've seen it before, you know it and you love it. Otherwise, this program can look a bit frightening. It's there's kind of a lot going on. So, if you were thinking about getting into After Effects and you want sort of a intro level, sort of more bare bones tutorial, this may not be it, but you can at least see what a intermediate level, I would call it, level of proficiency kind of looks like. So just trying to manage lots of layers, and we're going to be doing mostly, this is going to be character animation, so getting this guy to jump and swing its little hatchet, and yeah, we're trying to make it fun to watch. So that is the plan for today. Is apparently Merfolk Battle Mage got a little more votes in our Twitter and our Facebook poll. So the Merfolk will be emerging victorious from this scrap. Mermage, as we've been abbreviating it. And yeah, which I feel good about, since the Mermage was like at least an hour and a half to draw it and put it together. whereas the corrosive cube is, I think, 3 vector shapes. So, yeah. It's good to know that people enjoy the little more care that went into the mermage. Although I think the corrosive cube needs some highlights still, so I maybe just didn't do it justice. Okay, so already this After Effects file is fairly dense. Just to kind of get this intro video up and running. You know, each of the characters is kind of in its own nested composition. So this is what the isolated little merfolk guy looks like. This is a plugin in After Effects that helps with puppeting, which is what we're doing. So it's something you can do in After Effects without any plugins, but what this plugin, it's called Duick Basil, and it's fairly well known. If you're doing any kind of character animation, it can just sort of expedite your process. Basically what it does is it just sort of chains all your limbs together for you so that you really just have to say, like, if I want to move the arm, you know, I can move the arm around and the rest of the limb sort of responds to that movement accordingly. So yeah, so I've been trying to get a little more comfortable with bringing in plugins like that. Sometimes I feel like downloading like third-party things and having that come into my nice, clean Adobe programs is like, it sort of feels invasive, but I've been learning to get over that feeling and just sort of, in the, you know, for the sake of efficiency, looking out for those programs that are usually recommended by the MoGraph community. So yeah, we've been using that. And then the cube is, like I said, the cube is just 3 vector layers, and it has a little effect on it that oops, let's take a look here. Let me find my cube. Oh yeah, that's right. This is an instance of me not naming my layer. Okay, so yeah, this little cube is just one shape layer. And that for me was a way to challenge myself a little more. Shape layers are sort of a beast of their own when in After Effects. They have lots of little, I know this is probably hard to see, but there are lots of little like drop down menus. Oh yeah, my face is in the way. Let me see if I can move that. So yeah, this one that's highlighted over here is, that's where the cube is. It's just the shape layer, and so like each shape has its own drop down menu, and then from there you can control like the fill and the path and the stroke. If you've messed around with like Illustrator, it's like that, but it's slightly like overwhelming amount of options and little sub menus. So I'm going to challenge myself on this one and try to get more comfortable just using shape layers and animating them in interesting ways. So that is the plan. But okay, so we have this kind of intro that happens. So introduces both of the characters, and then most of them just, most of these videos just start with an aggressor. One of the characters is just going to take a lunge at the other one and start things off with kind of a sucker punch, cowardly move. I think I'm going to start with the merfolk. I feel a little more ready to animate that character. So I have turned down the fidelity on my After Effects preview, so if it looks a little grainy, it's probably A, because of the broadcast, and B, because I turned down the resolution to about 1/3, and that just helps the program run faster. So I don't really need to see it at like crisp 4K the whole time. Yeah, so that can help, especially if you're just running off of a laptop like I am. But okay, so here's what I'm gonna have to do. My merfolk character is in its own kind of nested composition. So it's like layers within its own folder, essentially. So I have to animate it in here in its nested composition, and then I need to be able to see what that looks like in the scene. So I need to open up another view. And just trying to get this all to fit on one 16-inch monitor. So if you see me slouching and getting really close to my screen, it's because all these little buttons are very tiny. I'm going to go ahead and hide my face for a little bit because I'm going to be doing some work down in the timeline, and just want people to be able to see what's going on there. One thing that I'm going to be thinking about, I'm trying to learn something new each time I do these. And my last video was, it was kind of this like witch hunter guy versus this skeleton. And one thing I guess I noticed was all of the movements were very deliberate and calculated. So just like I'm very concerned with people seeing the movements and how they fit together, like how movements flow between each other. But I'm realizing that that's not necessarily necessary. I think that sometimes less is more, and I can just, in this one, I'm going to be trying to like flash between poses. And I think that'll be faster for animating, and it might even just look better in general. So you'll see what I mean here, just sort of speed, rather than like these very slow, drawn out movements. So here's where I think this plugin really helps out is, for instance, there, just that movement there, since this dude is on like 16 different layers, obviously you can chain things together so that they stay relative to each other in After Effects, kind of like link things together. But even this movement that just took me one move, it created a ton of little subtle movements in the rest of the body, so which would otherwise just take more time. Oh, I went a little overzealous there. I think lower torso starting to separate. So the movement that I'm going for right now is what you would call anticipation in animation terminology, which is before some kind of movement. Typically there's a build up to that movement. So in this instance, it's kind of rearing back, putting the weight on one leg, and then ready to kind of spring forward. So yeah, and that can take a lot of different shapes as far as what kind of movement qualifies as a anticipation. So kind of wish I could minimize some of this like structure that is covering up a lot of my character. Yeah, I'll look into that because I understand it's probably not the greatest to look at. This kind of jumble of like red and black, dots and weird vector shapes. It's not great for me to look at either, so. Maybe I'll just zoom in on the actual scene so we get kind of both. I made a kind of a rookie mistake. Didn't set, I was trying to move these feet around and then, oh boy. What is going on? So I have to start over. Basically didn't set a keyframe. And then I started moving it around so it wasn't actually animating and it was just changing its position. It's a tragic error. No, it's dancing. Oh man, I really goofed. See, that just doesn't look the same. When in doubt, just start over. I feel like I was talking a lot of that time. Oh, did it auto save? Okay, it auto saved at a decent spot, I guess. A spot where I hadn't ruined it. Yeah, so I was like, I think in my last video I was thinking of animations in terms of like seconds, like how many seconds will it take to swing a sword or whatever. And I was watching some anime, which I actually don't normally do. You would probably take a look at me and figure I watch a lot of anime, but I actually don't. I'm just bad at watching shows in general. So, and I noticed that they did, really cool looking animations, and it was like could be done in like 2 or 3 drawings, and some like camera work, quote unquote. And you can make really cool, like energetic sort of movements by just flashing between poses. So that's something I was talking about a little bit earlier, and I'm going to try it now. So like from this pose into kind of a action pose, I'm gonna do it in like 5 or maybe like 10 frames. Since I made all these puppet models and stuff, I might as well show that stuff off a little, but I don't need to get carried away with like all those kind of drawn out movements like I was talking about before. So let's see if I can put that newfound inspiration to use. Anime. It's not fast enough. I'm going to move those keyframes closer together, which equals faster. Now, I'm just going to try like 5 frames. No, I'm going to do a little more. Let's do... Okay. Did like 8 frames. And then now I want you to lunge. Or... Oh, that ain't it. 6. Silly at the moment. probably use a little tweaking. I just don't know where to put that hand that isn't holding the hatchet. I guess like maybe just out. Whatcha? Okay. I think I'm satisfied with that transition. From kind of crouch to action pose. Actually, I am going to make it. Let's see here. Oof, that's a mess. I'm going to go through and adjust the speed graph, which is just kind of the acceleration. So it'll, instead of just like move from point A to point B with kind of a constant rate, you can instead choose to have it move at kind of a more dynamic sort of way. So like have it start really fast and then slow down, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm having it with this little graph down here at the very bottom. This just means like start at, you know, a very high velocity and kind of ease down into not moving at all, which is the 0. Probably don't need to do it for everything, but just the main ones, the arms. Yeah, so that looks more explosive. Which is what we want. Yeah, and then thanks to a video that my coworker Christopher shared with me, it also got me thinking about kind of effects animation and how much of the kind of heavy lifting those can do. Like the character animation doesn't need to be as kind of, it doesn't need to necessarily tell the whole story. If I add like a big flashing kind of sweeping motion, that is going to evoke more of the movement almost than the character itself. So I think that's another thing I'm going to try this round, is try less on these characters and just have like cool flashes and effects sort of carry the weight more, and it might even be probably save me time, honestly, which is always of interest, since these little, you know, as kind of minor as they are in the scheme of animation as an industry, these little animations do take me a fair bit of time. So if I could, sort of the goal of these is to follow just kind of my progress and different sort of insights that I find along the way. Hopefully that's helpful. At the very least, in case you have no idea what I'm doing and don't want to know what I'm doing, you could at least, you know, have a little knowledge about After Effects. You've at least seen it in practice, and if it ever comes up in conversation, you'd be like, oh yeah, After Effects, keyframes, layers. So that looks good. So I'm going to go back over into the scene. This is at least a little more colorful to look at. Wish I could make this. Okay, this is better. Okay. That's kind of worked out. It right as the camera pulls back, he lunges into action, which is kind of good timing, honestly. Looks nice. So now I'm kind of keeping all of these movements in this sort of isolated space. It's almost like it's gonna look like he's just like standing still and doing these actions in like zero gravity or something. And then over in the actual scene, I'm going to have the character's position move accordingly so that I can have it, you know, look like it's contacting the cube, look like it's, interacting with the environment more, and that's just going to be easier inside the scene itself rather than in its little isolation mode. So back over here, we have the Merfolk Battle Mage composition. So I'm going to scroll to the part where it starts moving. I'm going to set a position keyframe. And then we'll scroll ahead. 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, like right about here. We want, oops. It's the wrong thing. There we go. Try this again. So I'm going to set a keyframe right before makes the lunge. 1, 2, and then scroll ahead using the command and arrow keys. Just kind of move ahead frame by frame. And then I'm going to drag and over. I think I want them above the cube. It's going to be hard to say because the cube is going to end up trying to envelop this character, so it might be better if the cube is on top. I mean, I could always like go back and forth, but that gets messy. Let's just do it like that for now. No. Don't like it. Let's go into the graph editor, my favorite thing. And I'm just gonna really crank. That's maybe a little aggressive. Yeah, so I like the energy of that. And now kind of have to reset this character to go back to its starting position. One thing I do want to do is kind of have like a slight follow-up motion so that you can see the kind of trajectory. Since I did a really like fast motion, I sort of want like this sort of trailing motion where the arms and stuff are moving kind of slow-mo, almost like in the direction that they, you know, kind of have that inertia. Okay, now hopefully I can just copy these keyframes here and paste them so that I don't have to like, I can just reuse this pose essentially. Oh. Okay. There's some kind of contradictory movement going on. And try to solve that. Okay, so now I'm just gonna go through and I'm pasting kind of an earlier pose. Just so I don't have to repose it, you know, I can just copy and paste and hopefully save myself some work. So I'm just trying to have it return to this kind of stance after it does its little attack. Oops. One command that I've been getting a lot of use out of is just using the J and K keys on your keyboard. And it just sort of moves the playhead to, like, it jumps from keyframe to keyframe, so you can sort of line up all of your keyframes at the same moment without, you know, zooming in to the finest level to try to, like, match everything up perfectly. So trying to figure out what's going on with this foot. It's like separating. I'm dying. Okay, so this move is done. Once I add some big swooshes and some dust clouds and stuff, I think it'll look more convincing, more stylized than it does right now. And the cube should probably react to this hit. So let's do that real quick. This one is nice, at least, since it's not complicated enough where it has to be kind of in its own nested composition. It just lives in the scene, so don't have to cut back and forth between those windows. Thank you. I'm taking a sip. So right here should have the cube. No. The mermaid is out of its element. This will be a little different since it's, instead of this kind of very intense like character puppet thing with the mermaid, it's just gonna be like animating lots of Bezier kind of handles. Which I gave myself a lot of points so that this cube could maybe do some kind of interesting movements, but it's going to be, because I added all those points, it also makes it a little more tedious. But that's kind of the name of the game. It's animation. It's always fairly tedious. There's kind of the react from the merfolk, or sorry, the cube. Let's see what it looks like when I play it. That's pretty cool. I'm into it. Now, the thing let's see if I can find this. The other thing I would like to add is this expression. Let's see. So I think this is a good use for this expression. Let me see here. It's called the inertial bounce. It works. And I think this will add a pretty cool effect. It does a lot of work for me, which is always nice. Did it work? Can't tell. I don't think it did. So let me turn up the amplitude maybe, but what it's supposed to do is it's kind of hard to describe, but it's basically just supposed to give kind of like a, say, I don't know, it gives things like a wobble after they move. Which is gonna obviously help out with this kind of like gelatinous cube here. So it'd be cool if that would work. Let me turn off. Possible it doesn't work on paths. I guess that would make sense. Yeah. It doesn't work. Gonna do a quick Google search to see if there's any expressions out there that do what I want. Okay. I found a line of code. let's just drop it in and see if it works. I can't write code. It's JavaScript. Definitely can't write JavaScript, but see if that. Oh yeah, it does. Awesome. Love it. So basically what it's doing is it's just kind of assuming that those points are going to move on the same trajectory, and then it kind of like, once that movement is done, it sort of oscillates between those points and kind of creates this like wiggle. Yeah, it's pretty legit. I'm excited that I found this kind of code that's specific to path animations, since it, yeah, it's kind of working. Paths work off of like, I don't know, actually don't know the answer to that. I'm confusing myself. Okay. Nice. It's very no. It's not as gelatinous, but it looks good. Looks better than if I hadn't done it. I'm sure I could adjust. Oh yeah, there's a frequency and a decay. So if I turn the decay down, then I think it will do some more undulating. Looks interesting. I can't tell if it's like too springy looking. It's probably fine. Maybe I'm gonna tweak it kind of back. Maybe if I turn down the frequency. Yeah, that seems better. Boom. I think the last thing I'm going to do is just kind of add like a placeholder sort of effect just to show kind of what I'm going for. I'm pretty into this one, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna watch it on the Twitch stream because watching it on After Effects isn't cool enough. Just to see what y'all are seeing. Yeah. Okay. That little finding that code made me like all excited because I have this little document where I save expressions that I find that are useful. Let's go like new shape layer. Let's basically gonna draw like a Nike swoosh. Here in Portland, we're kind of the footwear capital of the world. There's, well, sportswear, I don't know. There's Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, and they are all at a constant war with each other. And then there's like a bunch of other like quote-unquote sportswear, outdoor wear, I suppose. Okay, so yes, yeah, athletic and outdoor. I know I guess it's a good test environment. It's constantly cold and rainy, so you just figure out if your puffy coat holds up to the elements right as you step outside of the lab, the Columbia lab. All right, so here is the semi-finished product. So there is kind of the effect animation. I think it can go maybe even more extreme. I think I said, this is a placeholder. I think a frame-by-frame drawing could be cool, but I don't know. I did also just bust that out in like 5 minutes, and it looks cool enough. I could maybe tweak it a bit. Very happy with the gelatinous cube so far. Yeah, I think it's coming together. So this was one move 2 hours later, but I think I learned a lot, and I'm excited to see what happens in this animation. I mean, we know what happens. We know that the merfolk is going to win, but yeah, I'm just curious what else I can do with this kind of shape layer and this different approach. I'll stop looping that so it's kind of driving me crazy. Okay. Awesome. Thank you to anyone who ends up watching this later on YouTube. Thanks for anybody who dropped in. Happy Friday. We'll be back next week with some more streams. I'll be doing something on Wednesday at 2. Could be more Clash of Cronies if I'm allowed to. Otherwise, I'll do something for Experimental Wednesday. And then Christopher will be streaming on Friday with something else. So look out for those. And, share with us what y'all have been doing in your spare time, or any kind of creative stuff that you've been working on. We'd love to see it. So yeah, just give us a shout on any of the social media channels. Yeah, thank you. And yes, we have our Ask Me Anything session coming up on remind me of the date, Wacom Experience Center. I want to say 16th. Yeah, there's a spot for people to ask questions, I guess, on really any of the posts that we've put regarding the AMA. You can comment, or you can just bring a question to the live session and we will get to it. And yeah, just anything that's, Wacom related. June 17th. Perfect. Next Wednesday. So yeah, bring your questions. We will get to them. And yeah, I'm excited for that. But anyway, I'm going to get going. So everyone have a good Friday, and thank you for tuning in. Take care.